Talking Music with Big Andy. Hello and welcome to another episode of Talking Music with Big Andy. And today I have with me Kevin Feazey from the band The Fierce and the Dead.
Hello, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good.
Cool. Now, let me see. I was a bit interested actually by the fact I'm always fascinated to see what genres or what sort of pigeonholes bands get put into, because sometimes it's kind of I'm not sure it really makes a lot of sense. Now I got three different things I saw. One said you were psychedelic.
Just three.
Well, yeah, one said you were psychedelic post rock.
Yeah.
Another said you were post rock math rock.
Sure.
And another one said progressive rock noise art prog. Now,
whatever that is.
I must admit, I'm not sure what almost any of those mean, really. I know what progressive rock is.
Yeah.
What psychedelic is, but I'm not sure what any of the others.
I think it's we kind of came up at a time when there was I don't know there was this time sort of like around 2010 where MySpace was still a thing.
Right.
Our guitarist Matt Stevens, he'd been doing a lot of solo shows where it was just him instrumentally with an acoustic guitar looping,
Right.
and doing these quite intricate kind of Frippian kind of interweaved kind of guitar pieces, you know.
It's what most straightforward rock guitarists call noodling.
Something like that.
Yeah.
But there's quite a lot of, you know, odd time signatures and, you know, things going in and out. So
yeah,
it's that thing, isn't it? When people always first hear you, they want to put you in something. And so I think the progressive rock kind of community was one of the first ones to kind of like pick up on him.
Yeah.
And also, and that's when he started getting coverage in some of the magazines and things like that. And at the same time, there was a lot of bands coming up that were, I guess math rock really is just nothing more than sort of, you know, like a modern take on progressive rock. You know, It's quite intricate kind of stuff. And then obviously you've got the more soundscapey kind of post rock stuff and all this kind of stuff going on at the same time. We evolved from Matt's project into a full band. And it's quite strange because we're all from the 90s. That's when we grew up.
Right.
And, you know, there was a lot of stuff around then that kind of covered all these bases. A lot of the kind of, I guess, what people now call sort of alternative rock. But I mean, if you look at it, it's quite a broad spectrum.
Yeah. I mean, that is such a wide.
Yeah, exactly. So we grew up listening to a lot of that stuff and obviously incorporated all that in there. And I think people, especially in the internet age, they want to sort of put you somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, it's quite strange. What I've found is that especially sites like Spotify and places like that, they want to pigeonhole people because they want to be able to like target.
Oh, it's a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare for us. Yeah.
Most of the bands I've talked to are trying to move away from that pigeonhole thing so that they can play basically whatever they want to play whenever they want to play it.
This is it. I mean, we've always loved, and again, we're we've got no problem with modern technology. It is what it is. The Pandora's box is open.
Yeah.
We're there's ways and means you can learn to live with it. And I think for a band like us, it's done us more favors than it has not. But one of the the big problems we always face is that when we're, for example, like advertising ourselves or putting ourselves out there on the internet. So off our last album, we have a track called Golden Thread, which is kind of our more metal sludgy kind of side of things. So if you hear that and go, oh, this sounds like a band for me, and then you go and you hear something, I don't know, one of the other tracks like Photogenic Love, which is a lot poppier, I think. You know what I mean? It's sometimes if you're sort of like I'm a metal guy or metal person, it can be quite confusing. But again, back before the internet really took hold, you had, I mean, even things like Top of the Pops, to be honest with you, but MTV2 and things like that. If you wanted to watch Iron Maiden on Top of the Pops, you also had to watch Duran Duran. You also had to watch Nick Hayward, whatever else was going on at the time. You were exposed to a lot of things, where I think now people want to go direct to the source. I like metal. I want to hear metal.
I always cite, when people say about judging bands and that sort of thing on the music they play, I always cite Extreme.
Yeah.
Because everybody knows more than words. But if you listen to the rest of their stuff, it's nothing like it.
100%. Yeah. And I think there's quite a few bands out there like that. So, but I do think we like to think of ourselves as sort of we're like a little community. And I think when people do come through the door, whether that's at a gig or whether that's online, and people are okay, they do this and they do a bit of this and they are, what was it, psych, post rock, math, whatever it is, whatever it is, and and it's like, oh, okay, this is something different, and then people tend to stay.
I think, I mean, for me, it's just a matter of, if I listen to some music and I like it, then I like it. It doesn't matter what it's.
That's it. That's 100%.
It says it is.
100%. 100%.
So you started in, as you say, you sort of started about 2010 after Matt had done some solo stuff, and then you guys together. So the first EP was just called Part One.
It was. So that came about. So Matt was recording stuff for a solo album, and myself and Stuart, we all the members of the band actually now as well, we all grew up together. We're all from Northamptonshire in England, and we all grew up together. We were all played in bands for quite a long time in various configurations, and we all ended up in London. Matt was recording his solo stuff. I was running a recording studio at the time where he was recording this stuff, and we got our friend Stuart to come and play drums on it as well. He wanted this kind of improvised piece, and we recorded it live in my little studio. Me playing bass, Stuart playing drums, Matt playing guitar, and the idea was to just kind of like almost do this, sort of, I know like there's quite a few like jazz bands who've done this kind of stuff, like Miles Davis and stuff, where you just record and then you kind of edit, and you kind of take things out of that. That was the concept. Let's see what happens. And I think Matt was quite excited at that point to, get back into playing electric again. And when it came to mixing it, I mean, it's dynamically it's quite complex, but especially like on the bass side, it's quite constant, but the way Matt was playing, and it's all one take, it was just like, it's going to sound really pretentious to say it, but it was like, sometimes when you it's like to edit it would be like cutting somebody off halfway through a sentence.
And
I just couldn't find the right place to do it. And this was a 19-minute piece. There was a section in the middle where we threw some synths onto it and like a drum machine part, to kind of like change things up as an overdub. But apart from that, everything else was live. And then it was like, okay, well, now we've got this 90-minute piece. And then Matt suggested, well, why don't we do this again, and see what happens? And maybe we could actually turn this into a band. And ta-da, that's kind of what happened.
Yeah, no, I must admit, my favorite thing you've put out, I mean, you've been putting stuff out since then, almost every year,
give or take a pandemic.
Give or take a pandemic. Well, but my favorite one is definitely your first album in 2011, which was called If It Carries On Like This, We're Moving to Morecambe. which is a brilliant title.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah. Oh, it was so much fun to make that record because we, by the way, the title was all down to Matt. I can't even remember the context that he said it with, but it wasn't like harvested from conversation. It was literally like, well, what are we going to call it? And he just went,
oh, right.
Carries on like this, we're moving to Walkham. So yeah, I don't know where it came from, but there it was. But again, most of that stuff, we followed the same principle as part one. So we only had parts. Me and Matt literally sat down for an afternoon and we said, okay, there's some bits. And then we went into the studio and spent a few days. I was very lucky at the time to get access to quite a good studio where we could set up live. Stuart was there, me in the control room playing bass. And a lot of it was improvised, and then we'd kind of go back and work on it and build it and, and put it all together.
Yeah.
And it was really exciting because it was the first time we'd recorded something. We've been in bands for years in various indie and metal and rock bands and all this. It was the first time we'd gone, well, let's just do this. There was absolutely no intention to like, oh, this is going to be a big thing, or, this is our new band. This was just friends, we've known each other since God knows when, to just sort of make something up. And it was a very freeing experience.
Yeah.
So, and I'm glad that, I'm glad
I
love that album too.
I love that. You had another album in 2011 called 10 by 10, another EP called On VHS.
Yeah.
Then 2013 you had an album called Spooky Action.
That's right.
Now, what I found after that, I found an album in 2017 called Live USA.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Were you
so
were you
touring? That was, yeah, I mean, it blew our minds. We've been very lucky that after just before Spooky Action, we hooked up with some friends of ours, Bad Elephant Music, a record label, who helped us out, put some records together. So it was with them. But we'd kind of been getting some recognition in the prog world, Prog magazine and all these kind of people, and I was completely unaware of it, but there's a whole scene across the world of this stuff.
Yeah.
And one of the kind of like the festivals on that circuit was a festival called Rozfest in America. Back then it was run by the amazing George Roldan, and he contacted us. It was actually a mutual friend called Lucas who saw us, who'd visited over here and saw us at the Summer's End Festival in Wales,
right?
And had gone back, evangelized for us. And yeah, George called us and was like, let's make this happen. And yeah, it was cool. It was an incredible experience. We got to go to America and play a festival over there. So yeah,
wow, that's great. That's really cool.
And get a live album out of it as well.
I like the fact that you've actually managed to find, because the problem with this sort of thing is that quite often people get together and they do these sort of things, and it just ends up being a studio thing because it's a matter of finding an audience out there that want to listen to you effectively jamming live on stage.
Sure. I mean, over the years, the tracks now are a lot more, structured and, much tighter. There's less kind of like improvisation per se. We've always, we've played with each other for so long now that we can kind of, if somebody wants to go off on a tangent, that's fine. We're, there's nobody's there shouting at anybody else, go, what are you doing? We've been very lucky, really, that people have kind of seemed to understand what we do, and also understand that I'm very, very proud of the fact that almost all of our albums sound completely different.
Right.
Sonically, we always try to do something different, and it's not out of any kind of, we need to do this. It's just like, let's do that this time, And we just try to keep that attitude of let's just see what happens. Let's see where we go. We're not, I remember there's a great Bowie quote where he says, it's not even a Bowie saying, but it's a very old adage, don't play to the gallery. And we've been very, very lucky that people have been prepared to come along with us. And we've had really, honest discussions with people who come to our gigs. Who are like, that last thing you put out, I didn't really like it, but I love this one and I love that, but I don't really like that one. And that's brilliant. That's absolutely fantastic. We're not a.
But the thing is, I mean, if the albums change and develop as you don't change and develop, you're always going to get people who prefer one sound to another or one album to another.
People get on the bus, they get off the bus. It's fine.
So you brought out the Euphoric album in 2018, and then of course we got the pandemic hit. So you really do anything recording wise?
Yes, that was when the last album, News from the Invisible World, that's when that all took shape. It was interesting. It was very strange, and it was, I guess you have to, obviously it was an awful time for so many people, some of us included, but it was an opportunity creatively. So because we'd done the Euphoric, we'd played gigs for that. We were booked to play some more festivals. The thing I don't think a lot of people realize, especially for semi-professional bands like ourselves, we all have day jobs, we all have to, we all have families and all this kind of stuff. Is for us to get together and rehearse is like, that's a whole thing in itself, So, to just sort of like say, should we go and play next week? That doesn't work for us, because there can be fallow times where we don't play together for like 3 months, and then we have to get back into it. So the one thing that the pandemic did was get us out of the cycle. So normally you play the gigs and then you go away and you have a certain amount of time to write stuff, and then you get back into it, and you've got these gigs booked already. Well, all of a sudden all of that went away. We had festivals booked that were, the last gig we played before the pandemic was at the Hope and Anchor. It was the warm-up for us to go and play the Prognosis Festival in the Netherlands. And that was literally supposed to be the next weekend. And we said goodbye to each other on the Saturday night. See you next Friday to get in the van to go to the Netherlands. And then this thing was sweeping across Europe. And I think it was even till like the Wednesday when the government of the Netherlands said, right, okay, shutting everything down, which is when all the festivals, they were waiting to be told to stop, because then the insurance kicked in. So all of a sudden everything was cancelled and off. And it was like, okay. So we said goodbye on that Saturday night to each other. And we weren't in the same room with each other for like 2 years. So all of a sudden it was like, well, what do we do now?
So did that situation prompt the change from being a purely instrumental band to writing songs that have vocals?
It was something that was kind of on the horizon. And again, we've said in other interviews, I don't want anybody to think that, now we're going to do vocals. It wasn't like some kind of ideological stance. It was just, well, let's just try doing some vocals. And the way we had to, so the way we've always written in the past is we all get in the room together, we write stuff, we just kind of like build stuff like that. It's very much written in the room. We might go and demo some stuff at a studio or something like that. But this time, obviously, we couldn't all be in the room together. So this was the first time where we got into file sharing. So we were, we all have like little setups in our houses. And Matt would send me a set of guitar chords or a riff, and I'd send him stuff, or Steve or whoever. We'd send stuff to each other, work on it, send it back. It was like like almost like Chinese whispers. It's kind of like everything would change as it went along. And rather having that process of being in the room and somebody going, oh, what about this, which is much more quick fire, it was, I'd send a drumless track to Stuart, and Stuart could spend the next 2 weeks, if he wanted to, writing his parts without some bloody guitarist standing there tuning up and trying to work out his pedals worked in the background. So it was the first time ever that a lot of us had that chance to stop and actually hear what was going on. And obviously we had talked about putting vocals on already. We talked about getting some guest vocalists and this, that, and the other. But having that pause gave us the time as well to experiment with the vocals.
Right.
We still went about it the same way as we normally do, where we wrote all the music first and then put the vocals on afterwards. I'm not sure if that will continue to be the way we go forward, but it was very weird because it was the first time again, unless you demo stuff, a lot of the time, the first time you hear it is in a studio when you're, okay, we're making the album now. It goes like this, and that ability to actually take a step back and reflect doesn't always, isn't always there. Whereas this time it was like, well, we can actually think about what sort of drum sound we want. We can, is it better on this guitar or that guitar? Well, we can try it now, and really take our time with it. So there's that triangle, isn't there? There's you can have it cheap, you can have it fast, you can have it quality, but you can only choose two of these things.
Yeah.
So we sacrificed fast. We don't have like huge equipment budgets or anything like that, so we could do it on our home setups. Obviously we hired a studio for the drums and a few other bits and bobs, but we could really take our time and be in no rush and say, is this what we want, as opposed to, well, that's that then.
I get it. So I mean, the is the songwriting, I mean, when you were doing it before, it was kind of all of you just kind of coming up with your own pieces and fitting them in with each other. So is it the same with it with this album, or have you actually structured the songwriting process a bit more?
It's kind of the same. I mean, a lot of time, the thing I really love about songwriting in a group is that somebody will do something on something that you didn't think of, and we're not precious about our parts. We do not. I don't think any of us have ever come in and said it goes like this.
Yeah.
A lot of time we've come in with a part and gone, I like this, let's do something with this, and then people kind of change it around, and that was actually a really wonderful thing about recording, doing the file sharing thing, as I said, of just sending something off to somebody and then coming back with something you would never have even thought of in a million years. Going, that's giving me, and then you'd respond to that, and it was kind of like tag. Whereas I think in the rehearsal room, it's a lot quicker. It's a lot, which is a good thing as well. But again, you don't then get to go away always with a recording, sit and listen to it and go, oh, okay, maybe this, maybe that, you kind of like, oh, okay, that's done now. So
who's doing the vocals? Is it
me? You are?
Okay. I was going to say, is it shared or is it
No, it's me. Live, Steve sings as well. And we have our friend Tom Hunt from the band Orange Clocks, who's been playing live keyboards and doing vocals with us as well. He's on the album as well, doing a lot of backing vocals as well. So that was really cool to sort of like start experimenting with like harmonies and things like that.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
You've released a single from the album called Shake the Jar.
Yeah.
And the album is available for downloading.
Yep, download, CD,
that's actually where I saw where I first saw about the band, to be
Oh,
honest.
right. Okay.
I saw this thing about downloading the band, and I listened to some of it and thought, this is really good. So I had to listen to some of the other stuff from before and
Right.
thought, I really like this. And I thought it'd be great to talk to you about
Oh,
the
fantastic.
band and
Thank you.
about what you
Well,
were doing.
this is wonderful, isn't it? This is what I really like. And the thing that I like this about bands is when I discover a band, this is one of the good things about the internet. There's really no such thing as a launch anymore, because it's whenever you find it.
Yeah.
You've got, I don't know, 16-year-olds now downloading, listening on Spotify or whatever to everything that, I don't know, the Dead Kennedys ever did. Consuming all that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And I love the idea of, us being like this space online where somebody comes in, it's like a shop. So you see something in the window and you go, oh, that's nice. And then you come in, you go, oh, what's this? So
Yeah.
as you've said yourself, I think the difference, it's still identifiably us, I hope. But the difference between our first album and this album, I hope, intrigues people.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. It was interesting going back and listening to the earlier stuff because of the fact that it wasn't quite what I expected.
Sure.
It was, it wasn't bad. It wasn't that I didn't enjoy it and didn't like it, but it wasn't quite what I expected because I hadn't realised before that you'd been a solely instrumental band and the sort of stuff you were doing.
Yeah.
There are a few things on some of the earlier stuff that remind me a little bit in places of. Have you heard of the liquid tension experiment?
I have not. No, Liquid Tension
Oh,
Experiment. Okay, well that's one.
it's
I'll write that
fantastic.
down.
It's basically a group of very very experienced musicians who have been playing around the scene, sometimes with each other, sometimes not, for many years.
Sure.
And they did basically the same thing. They went into the studio and just basically jammed and then edited it into tracks.
Right. Yeah.
It's got people like I think Mike Portnoy is on it and Derek Sherinian and
Oh yeah.
people
I
like
know
that.
them. Yeah.
So there's a few bits that reminded me of the sort of things that they were doing,
Oh, okay, cool.
which is kind of like, I suppose it's kind of jazzy prog sort of stuff in
Sure.
places. But I mean, as I say, it was great it was interesting to hear it because it wasn't expected. It was kind of, oh, hang on a minute, I wasn't.
Well, that's wonderful. I mean, again, from my perspective, I like that about bands. I mean, sometimes you get, I mean, I'm a diehard, because they got me at the right time, a diehard like Iron Maiden fan. I can't be subjective about them. I know some of the later albums, but those first 7 albums, I can't be subjective about it. I couldn't tell you if they're good or bad. I've got no idea. They mean everything to me. And it's that thing of, sometimes you go into this shop that the band's created, this world, and everything sounds the same.
Yeah.
And this album just sounds like a slightly different version of the album before. Like I say, with some bands like Maiden or Slayer or something like that. Okay, fine. That's what they do. But I prefer it when you go in and there's like, oh wow, here's the Calypso album, and here's the here's the death metal album. And all I like that. I like to hear different things I haven't heard before.
No, I agree. I like finding out. I mean, I always like finding new music, finding new bands, and that sort of thing. It's great. And as I say, whenever I find somebody, I want to look back at what they've done, what else they've done before, or whatever.
Yes.
And see, and also where they get their influences from. You were saying earlier about that you grew up in the 90s, but I mean, what sort of bands were you guys influenced by?
So we started. I mean, it's the pretty standard tale of, we all started as metal kids. So you've got your big four, obviously Iron Maiden as well.
Yeah.
And then in our hometown, we had a particular guitar teacher, a guy called Richard Beaumont. And we was only sort of like 14, 15 years old, but he turned us on to bands like the Mahavishnu Orchestra.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Obviously King Crimson, the Groundhogs. The Groundhogs is one that not many people pick up on with us, but when they go Groundhogs, okay, especially on the first album, when you go Groundhogs, oh right, okay, yeah. A lot of what we do comes from Groundhogs. So we were kind of like, exposed to a lot of that stuff. Obviously a lot of the jazz, the stuff that came out of that. And then we just kind of like, the 90s kind of exploded. So you had all your bands like Portishead and Radiohead. obviously, bands like Smashing Pumpkins, Caius, who eventually, Josh Homme kind of like took it onto the Queens of Stone Age.
Yeah.
Rock music was doing something, and underneath all that as well, we're all big fans of, especially like the American hardcore punk stuff like Black Flag, Dead Kennedys, Bad Brains, all this kind of stuff. So again, you can see that progression from those bands and where they took it, and it was just a wonderful time. You had Jeff Buckley, all this really varied stuff going on.
That's the thing, that there was such a wide variety of music around at the time, which I always found quite interesting. Was like you'd open up a music magazine or a music paper that said it was rock, and there would be just about everything in there.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember, being very young, buying, I think it was Metal Hammer or something like that, and this would have been late 80s, very late 80s. And they'd cover. I mean, even as a metal magazine, they'd still cover like Status Quo,
yeah,
and Slade, and whoever else was around at the time. It was still all in there, because that's just how it was. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think, a lot of the stuff that's going on at the minute is absolutely amazing. I think you have to sort of look for it a bit more. I think the way that people record now, and that kind of like kind of power that's been given back to people, I think is a wonderful thing. I think there's a lot of stuff out there. I think the trick now is that because the equipment is there now, the thing you're always fighting against now is homogeneity, because everybody can use the same things now. So if you can all have the same drum sound, and you can all have the same,
I think it's one of the things that I was talking to somebody a while ago, and we were saying about the fact that the opportunity now for people to release their own music is better than it's ever been.
100%. Yeah.
The problem is the fact that it's so easy to make music now that you lose that certain amount of creativity and individuality, because people use the same backing tracks or the same
things,
sounds or whatever to do the same things, and it kind of gets a bit like, what happened to, I don't know. It's like there's a title of a book which came out in the 90s, I think, which was about electronic rock band, electronic music, and it was called Like Punk Never Happened.
Right. Okay.
And that's kind of the way I feel about things now. Not then so much. I didn't agree with that then, but now I do. I think there's a certain amount of that kind of creative individuality that punk had has disappeared.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's still there, but the thing now is that there's all these little pockets of the internet. So there'll be these various little movements that kind of come and go in the blink of an eye, and then you'll find years later they've seeped into like the mainstream. But whereas before it used to be, okay, there's this group of bands in Cardiff, journalists would be like, right, let's go there, and all of a sudden it's, let's make it a thing, let's call it this or whatever it is. Now I think on things like SoundCloud and these kind of places, there's these little things happening, but they come and go really quickly. So I mean, there's a style like they used to call it, I think it was vaporwave, like electronic music, kind of almost like electronic shoegaze, and that was around in the before we even started, on these little SoundCloud sites and things like that, and then it just kind of like fade out, but then you hear it starting coming into pop. You realize this stuff kind of, it's not the same way anymore. It kind of like just slowly pervades,
I don't know what you mean.
I find it fascinating that like bands like Slowdive, who we're massive fans of, when they're sort of like their first time round, they were obviously well known and all the rest of it, and respected, but didn't really go anywhere. And then they've in the modern environment, which is much more in line almost with what they were doing back then, you know, they've come back and are now, you know, playing, you know, headlining slots at decent festivals.
Yeah,
with a very young audience listening to them. And I think that's the beauty of what's happening at the minute, is that there is no, it's kind of like it's a blessing and a curse, isn't it? There's no time to anything anymore.
No.
You know, things are just relevant when they're relevant, you know, and it kind of just goes around like that, you know.
It's true. It is true. So, I mean, at the moment, you've got the band News from the Invisible World out. You've got the album out, rather, and the single Shake the Jar. Are you touring those? Or are you?
Yep. So we did the album launch at the Black Heart in Camden in October. And then we've got, I'm going to have to look this up now because I can't remember my own dates. We've got, well, it's always the way, isn't it? We've got 4 dates coming up, well, 5 actually. So start off with, we're going to be headlining the Winter's End Festival in Chepstow on the 12th of April. Then on the 26th of April, we're at one of our favourite places. It's called JT Saws in Nottingham, which is amazing. It's we kind of, you know, we grew up in sort of like small venues, and this is literally an old grocer's shop that's been converted. Right. Yeah, cool. It's fantastic. Then on the 27th, the day after, we're at Gulliver's in Manchester with we've managed to convince our friends Trojan Horse, who we did a tour with about 10 years ago, to get back together and come and play with us there. 3rd of April, we're at the Griffin in Bristol. And then on the 4th of April, we're at the Ramsgate Music Hall in Ramsgate.
Okay, cool.
So at the moment, they are all sold out, except for, I think there's still some tickets for Winter's End and the Ramsgate Music Hall.
Okay.
And we've got a few more that we're planning on doing later in the year as well. So again, we're very mindful of our time and that we want to keep recording and producing new music. So we have to make sure, you know, because it is you can go out and rush around the country in a van and then come back and go, oh, what now?
So you know? Are you aiming for doing more festivals than smaller venues?
We'd love to. I mean, it's so weird because when we were planning a lot of this stuff, genuinely, even after coming out of lockdown, you know, we booked the album launch show, and the album, you know, came out like a month before, but we didn't know what was going to happen because we had so many friends who, after the lockdown, were like, brilliant, right, lockdown's over, let's get out there, and people weren't coming. Yeah. So you had a perfect storm. You had, you know, you still had, like, you know, reticence from a lot of people, understandably, about, you know, being in public places. Yeah. You had the cost of living. You had, you know, or just the world, you know, and so I think, unfortunately, a lot of people got bitten a little bit by this kind of, oh, it's business as normal, and it's not business as normal. No. So realistically for us, we said, well, we could have gone, let's go out and book, you know, 300 seaters and and go. And we were like, no, let's make small, unique events, for people that have really stuck with us all the way through.
No,
I mean, like, the Griffin in Bristol, it's tiny, it's 50 people. But we know that everybody who's brought a ticket to that are people that we're so thankful for, that they've been with us through. And, there's nobody's going to discover us on that night. I doubt very much, because it'll be, but that's the kind of the idea of it, is like, this is us going out to our, the people who've been with us through all of this. And, and getting out to see some people. Our gig at the Black Heart, it was so cool. We've been so lucky. During the pandemic, we have a Facebook group. We have our general Facebook page, and then we have a Facebook group we started ages ago called the Fierce Army, that's very active. And we noticed, like, during the pandemic, we were quite active on there because, we know a lot of people that listen to our stuff, and, made a lot of friends, and people were just like chatting to each other. And we realized people were coming there as a community.
Yeah.
And so when we played at the Black Heart, there were so many people there that had been friends with each other for 2 years, but had never met in real life.
Right. Yeah.
And it was just so much joy in the room, to sort of like, everybody's here together. We're all having this kind of experience together. And we're so grateful for that. I mean, you can't plan for that. That's just amazing, Face down is the broken march, and I can't get up, he said. I'm one of the lucky few, but I still run out of breath. I'm angry now, and I don't know how I can make it work. Yeah, that's right, I'll take the punch and try not to go berserk. Are you counting up all that you have? Are you making sure this too shall pass? And you try to keep your head up high, keeping pace, stand up to glorify. I'm done with staring at the sun, blinded by the hate. We hooked up on the taste. Gone, left the on and on, falling down from clouds above, crashing into broken love. What's wrong with the hole you're in, with the love we give, they said. We understand that you had a plan, but this is all that's left. Show your ugly side.
So, apart from gigs and that, what's the plans for the future? I mean, do you have a long-term plan, or do you just play it? Are you just playing it one day at a time at the moment?
Well, we're already starting to record, write and record for the next album.
Okay.
Starting to get that put together. I think because of, we kind of did a sort of a proof of concept during the pandemic of like working this way, because we were all spaced out a bit more around the country now as well. Before, we all lived in London. Now we're kind of a bit more spaced out because of families and work and things like that. But the one thing for us, and it's always been, and we said this in interviews in 2010, the one thing for us is to not split up.
Right.
And the way to do that is to make sure that it's always fun for us.
Yeah.
And that we're doing things that we want to do. And yeah, that's what we want to keep doing. And, we love writing new music. We love creating these things and putting them out there in the world. So I think we've got the gigs booked, we're ready for that. But I think the next, real focus is going to be on producing new music, and trying to create some kind of role on that. And to just keep getting that stuff out there. And then we'll see. Where it goes from that. We've been very fortunate that people have been interested, and people have offered us some nice things, and we hope that continues, and we hope we get to do nicer things.
No, I think I don't see any reason why you shouldn't, because I think musically you've obviously progressed as you've gone on. I wouldn't say progressed. That's a really wrong way of putting it, because you started off very well, and it's kind of like you just kind of you've changed. I don't know about progressed, but you've changed,
I'd,
and you're
yeah,
continuing to change all the time, and that's a good thing, because I think that keeps it fresh for you, and it keeps it fresh for the audience as well.
100%. I mean, I've told this story a million times, so apologies to anybody watching or listening to this if I'm repeating myself. But I was working on a studio session way back when, and there was a Russian artist that we were recording, and his name is Boris Grishebnikov. Now he's a big deal in Russia. He's been around since, like, the 70s. He's kind of like their Bruce Springsteen. They're
Right.
very respected and everything. Anyway, great guy, lovely chatting with him. Really was somebody that just wanted to make music, had no pressure on him, just did it because he wanted to do it. Really inspiring. Anyway, I was chatting to him. At that point in time, I was in 2 bands. And he said to me, he said, "Oh, did you play in bands?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm in 2 bands." And he genuinely looked at me puzzled and said, "Why are you in 2 bands?" And I said, "Well, because one band does kind of this stuff and one band does that." And he said, "Why don't you just be in one band and do whatever you want?" And I was like, "Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a really good point. That's a really good
it's a
point."
good point.
Yeah. So I guess that's what this band is that, there's no, there's no bartering over, oh, I'll get, if we do this riff, then we have to have my riff. There's no egos about it. I mean, literally on the album, there's some songs where some of us are barely playing on them. Live, we play the parts, but like on the album, it was just like, well, that person's here at the minute and they're going to do it. And, there's no egos about anything. And it's just that joy of being involved in something that we're really proud of.
Yeah. Oh, cool. I'm great about it. I like that. But I really like your stuff. I like what you've done before. I like the new
Thank you.
album. I think there's some really good stuff on there, and I genuinely think that there's a lot of people out there that will also like your stuff if they haven't heard it. So I mean, I've seen a few different things, places about the new album, adverts now on Facebook and a few other places for people to get it and to listen to it. I would recommend to anybody out there to give it a listen. And I wish you all the best with the band and with everything else.
Thank you so much for taking the time to have a chat. We
No,
love chatting to people.
it's been fantastic to talk to you, and I do genuinely wish you all the best. And who knows, maybe one day we'll see you headlining Glastonbury.
Well, I better hurry up.
Okay. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you very much. Thank you to everybody out there for listening and watching. And I'll put all the details, as I always do, in the information for this video, where you can catch the band and see them online. So thank you all for now, and thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye.